This is the Bama Podcast with Marty Solomon. I'm his co-host, Brent Billings. Today we continue our analysis of Season 5 of The Chosen with the discussion of the 4th episode.
Indeed. Man, I don't have anything to get rolling with here, so...
Well, I do, actually.
Oh, right.
I have to admit something.
All right.
Here I am, 4 episodes in, and I'm finally realizing that the theatrical experience has, made me misunderstand the flow of everything. At the beginning of every episode is the Passover scene, and then the rest of the episode is something else. In the theater, where they had 2 or 3 episodes grouped together at a time, I was just like, oh, it's just going back and forth between the Passover meal and the rest of it. And I did not realize that it was one part beginning. They condensed the credits. They did all these things, and it has just now clicked halfway through the season that they're doing that beginning and then the rest of it thing.
Yeah.
And I did not have it like that in my mind.
That actually makes a ton of sense. And I bet that flowed in theaters actually really well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Totally.
So that's my, sometimes I pay attention to the little details and miss the whole forest.
Well, good enough.
All right, let's get into it. So we are at that Passover table, and they are doing something called the Dayenu, which this was my first exposure to it. So educate me, Marty.
Yeah, no, that is the Dayenu. I'm definitely familiar with it in a modern setting. I didn't spend any time. I've just gotten so used to the way they'll utilize different things in a historical sense. I mean, you know me. I'm not quick to criticize that. There's so little we know for sure. I'm not sure where we can date the Dayenu as something that community engaged. I didn't even care enough to look it up. I should have cared enough to look it up, but I didn't because I was like, no, this fits right here. It flows. And we've now seen them do similar things with, we're going to see haroset later on in the Seder meal. He's got some haroset. He's going to put on some matzah. I always talk about when I lead a Seder, man, I really don't know if the haroset's going to be there in the Second Temple period.
Is that kind of, it kind of looked like some kind of a dip, I guess.
Yeah, it's an apple. It's an apple fig, maybe not fig, but it's an apple fruity. It's supposed to symbolize the mortar of the bricks that they made in Egypt. It's probably later, but then again, I don't know. Some of the things that I put in the Seder that I think probably are there in Second Temple, other people have said, there's no way. So who knows? Maybe that. But they've done that. I'm trying to think of other examples in previous seasons. They've just done that before and very tasteful. Oh, it was I think they said the Eshet Chayil in the Sabbath flashback.
Right.
Which was early. And I was like, well, they're probably not saying the Eshet Chayil back there, but fitting. And I liked it. It's a similar vibes for me. So didn't even bat an eye.
Well, even the idea of rabbis, not a formal title.
Yeah. Yep.
When Jesus was walking around, but the idea is there.
Yep.
Pardes.
Yep.
Same thing. Not using those specific terms, but
right.
We think clearly.
Principles. Yeah.
At play. So yeah, that works for me. But they go through a whole bunch of Exodus stuff, a little bit of temple stuff, lots of things. And then Big James has his addition at the end about Jesus choosing to come during their lifetimes.
Wait. I have something to add. If he had built for us the holy temple and not sent the Messiah in our lifetimes, it would have been enough. We would have waited. But you chose us. You chose now. And it is enough.
Thank you, Big James.
Then we kind of move on with the meal, and Peter and John exchange some looks. And then John leans in and asks Jesus who is going to betray him. And Jesus whispers to John, we can't hear it. But then Jesus dips and hands it over to Judas. And then the look on John's face is absolutely priceless in this moment.
Yeah, I can remember watching that scene. I cannot picture the look on his face as we record right now, but I do remember the scene that you're talking about. And, again, I've kind of enjoyed how they've peeked, because we have all these questions. How did that work? What was being whispered? What was being said where everybody could hear it? What was being said to where only the people sitting next to each other could hear it? And they put together those details in a way that I could definitely see, I could relate to. It's not ridiculous. And that interaction's a great example of how they've done some of those things.
Yeah, and this is all in John 13. So from John's perspective, he's writing this, and he says that Jesus says to him, it's the one who I'm going to. And so we know that that's what Jesus is saying to John, but I think the way they portray it, where we can't hear Jesus saying that, is like, yeah, we know that that's what Jesus said because John wrote it, and he's the one he said it to. But just the fact that in the rest of the room, this was not like a big open conversation. It was kind of, everybody was doing something else.
Yeah, there's a very personal comment that Jesus makes to Judas in this scene where he says he has you now, I believe referring to probably the adversary or the Satan, or however you want to phrase that. But
yeah, John 13:27, it says, as soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. And I didn't look up what word is actually behind that in John, but yeah.
Which they really capture it in his eyes at different points in this episode. The next episode, you really feel like Judas is. And again, not that I would necessarily read the passage exactly like that or see it that way, but as they've designed and created the show and written it, you really feel like he's in a different headspace, soul space,
yeah,
than he has been previously, even in his struggles.
Yeah, and Jesus's response in the show, Judas is like, who has me? And Jesus says, not God.
Yeah, right.
And so they leave it open for all sorts of interpretations.
Yeah.
But yeah, so John's look is like when, like, it's a really slow, like, Jesus grabs the bread and he breaks it a couple of times, and then he grabs the little leaf and he puts it on there, and then he kind of struggles to get the stuff on the bread, and I'm like, sure. And then it pans over to Judas, and then it cuts back to John, and he just like snaps forward, like, did I just see what I just saw?
Right.
Oh my gosh,
right.
What does this mean? But yeah, so Judas, they have the conversation. Jesus says, what you're going to do it quickly. Judas takes a bite, and knowing that it's like an apple fig sweet sort of thing is different. I thought this was the horseradish thing.
Yeah, it's definitely how I do it. In my Seder, I have this happening with the maror, but it's a different, you could do that too. Especially as I've said this often throughout our journey through the Chosen, like if I'm the one creating this and writing these scenes and having to make the cinematic experience, there are some moments where if I can dodge it, I'm going to dodge it. And so if I can dodge them having to do the maror here, because that just changes. I don't know how you're going to depict that well on their behalf.
Sure.
And then it makes sense that they would even put the haroset in there. It gives them something to dip.
Right.
That's totally feasible.
Yeah. Well, it does make sense because Judas did not really have that much of a reaction when he took the bite. But I was just thinking as I was seeing it, like, oh, he's like, okay, this is going to be hard for me to do, but I need to like, I got to force Jesus's hand. I got to do what I'm going to do because he's apparently, chickening out or something. I don't know exactly what we're trying to think Judas is doing, but yeah. So he leaves, and then Matthew is like, where did Judas go? And the disciples are like, oh, there's this tradition of giving alms for the poor. And he's like, but during the middle of the meal? And they kind of like brush it off. And
which I thought that was an interesting, like, based on the anointing, it was an interesting way to connect ideas with Judas leaving. That's not in the text, but very clever. Because, Judas has now made a big deal when Mary washes the feet of Jesus. And he was like, oh, the money could have been given to, like, the alabaster jar. Oh, the money could have been given to the poor.
Sure.
So he's like, that all of a sudden has context that I thought, not a whole lot of, it's not deeply meaningful. I just thought, oh, that's clever. That's one of those little passing details. I was like, that was clever.
And if you think about it, it's like, wouldn't they wonder where he went? Because there's not that many of them. He's not really sneaking off.
Yep.
So I like that. And then the scene ended with Jesus giving the new command to love from John 13. So,
yep.
And then we go into the credits. So then we have Atticus watching over the crowd. Coffney is continuing to talk to the merchants and make his case for that whole plan. And then Yusuf looks over. He sees Jesse and Veronica. They're talking about what the Messiah means, and they seem to be talking about Coffney and what he's trying to do and all that stuff. So everybody's kind of watching everybody else. Then Mary's walking, and she sees Shmuel and asks him where to find Yusuf. And they argue about that for a little bit. Then Yusuf comes up. A lot of tension going on here. Mary ends up sharing her fears with Yusuf, and then someone calls Yusuf and is like, oh, we got to go do these plans with Shimon. A lot of tension going on here. A lot of like, who's responsible for what? What's actually happening? What has been said? What are we just assuming?
I really like how they're portraying the spot that Yusuf is in within the biblical text. Like he's in this spot where he's a member of this Sanhedrin. He's got duties. He's got responsibilities that he actually wants to be there for. It's not like he wants to be a voice that's pushing probably against what he feels like. And I love they haven't made Yusuf alone, like a lone ranger in the Sanhedrin room. There are other people whenever they get together that are like kind of fighting this other narrative. There's other Pharisees that are, wait a minute, this isn't right. This isn't how we see it. This isn't the right thing to do. So they haven't made Yusuf all on his own, but he's pulled in this. He wants to be a part of this thing. And yet he's got other, not just responsibilities, but opportunities to be him in some unique spaces.
Yeah. And Shmuel is making all kinds of like, sort of inflammatory accusations against him, like, totally. Oh, you just think this because you're enamored with him and you're not actually thinking clearly. And Yusuf is remarkably like calm in the face of those things. He does not get very defensive about it.
You know the memes that talk about two clips that give off the same energy. I feel like the Judas and the Shmuel, like at this point in the storyline, like they give off the same energy. Like Judas is now like crossed whatever that is. He's crossed a threshold. And Shmuel, he's like not even thinking straight. He's just like losing his mind every time he opens his mouth. He's crossed the threshold. He was at this point of like, what is he going to do? Where is he going to go? And now he's just like, can't even think straight.
Last episode, 2 episodes ago, where he was like, oh, Jesus is saying this. And they're like, no, he didn't actually say that exactly. Right. Maybe we should get a scribe and write it down because you're trying to make more of this than it's actually there.
Yep.
So then we have Judas sharing his concerns with Peter about Jesus's validation of Rome and their taxes and that whole system. And Peter's like, Judas, I love you, man. I see that you believe in Jesus, but you don't actually trust him to do what needs to be done.
Yeah. Again, you see the same theme that they're giving Judas like this, like, I want to unify God's people. I want to unify Israel, but we have to unify them against Rome. We've got to unify them as a powerful social movement. But that unification, and I did love that line. I wrote it down from Peter.
You believe he could make swords magically appear in the hands of all those people and yet from that same mouth? You question his every move. Why can't that faith that believes so fully, knows so deeply, also allow you to trust that he knows what he's doing?
You keep wanting to use Jesus for all the things he could do. You want to use Jesus for the moment and the movement. You actually don't want to listen and follow what he says as a leader and a shepherd. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good reflection points, maybe even for us in our world. Pretty good.
And again, kind of a softer stance from Peter. Like he could just totally lay the hammer down.
Yes.
But he's trying to like help Judas actually see something.
Totally.
And he's, he has some harsher words and some more straightforward statements about it, but he also just like leaves room for Judas to come around and change his heart on his own.
Yeah, you've just articulated something that I've sensed and haven't put words to, but we have watched Peter change over the course of these seasons. And like, we've seen good personal growth and development for sure, without a doubt. Not even like I'm choosing to see this in the character. No, in the character development as they've depicted it, he's definitely growing, which is going to make, spoiler alert, his betrayal, his denial of Jesus that much more harder to watch because of how he's going to feel. And yet as a viewer, you're like, I'll probably have a lot of things to say about that. I'm assuming that might be next season, but maybe it's this season. Who knows? but like, oh no, Peter, like you are growing. You're not the same person that Jesus found in the boat in Galilee. Like he really has changed. It's really something.
Yeah. So then we are with Caiaphas and Gadara. They're talking about Jesus. Gadara says he thinks Jesus is of the Pharisee persuasion, which is like, what a delightful little thing for Bama listeners to hear in the show.
Yeah.
But Caiaphas he's like, well, what? So he believes in the resurrection, but he doesn't believe in marriage there? Who would want to go to a heaven like that?
Yeah, right.
And they call this, they didn't call it. There has been called an emergency meeting of the Sanhedrin.
Yes.
And they're like, well, is it going to be for this? He's like, well, no, it's more important to, like, the real reason we're doing this is to undermine Jesus' authority. Caiaphas is like, it was a really good effort by Yanni to trap Jesus, but the people are still enthralled with him, and it didn't actually work. Jesus is walking into a trap where everybody loses, we lose. Like, it's just going to be bad for everybody if this goes the way it goes. And he says that the Pharisees are not thinking clearly. The public trap of Jesus is not working. Caiaphas says he's going to save the day by quietly arresting Jesus, and then the people can focus on Passover. The whole thing will blow over. And Gadara's like, well, the one problem with that is actually being able to find Jesus, which is so hard for me to picture as we go through these things, because it's like we generally know where Jesus is most of the time. There are moments where it is portrayed that Jesus is off somewhere else and his disciples don't know where he is or whatever. But for the most part, it's like, how hard could he be to find? Like, Jerusalem is not that big, right? But that does seem to be the case in many of these passages. So
I like how they pulled the details of the political and like the socio-religio-political dynamics together, and that I've had some of the same thoughts about. They're working really hard to make Jesus like he's just sneaking away at every, like he's here and he's gone. We don't know where he went, which is fine. I could see that being historically plausible. I don't know how necessary it necessarily is within the text or the storyline itself, but that's definitely how they've wanted to depict it. The one thing they're not doing, and I'm okay with this, they are not at this point depicting a secret Sanhedrin.
Oh,
like we've talked before about how Josephus references, there's like kind of the mafia, the corrupt Sanhedrin, and then there's the official one. They've kind of wrapped it all together, and they've done it really well in order to wrap it all together. And you kind of see the corruption with Caiaphas, and you assume that it's kind of elsewhere in the family. They've made that kind of clear, and they've made the statements about Herod. They're the Herodian priesthood, the Herodian Picts. Your dad doesn't even want you to be a priest. Like those kind of connections they've made. But they've done it without having to try to depict a formal Sanhedrin and an informal corrupt Sanhedrin. Which so far, I've really been impressed with how they've done that without making that distinction.
Yeah. And of course, this isn't necessarily the same thing, but even the scene kind of is like, backroom conversation about how we're going to pull this off. So this is a little flavor of that, even if it's not as formalized as we might have thought of it.
Totally. Yep.
So then we're back in Phoebe's house. John is examining a fresco, and Jesus enters and kind of startles him. And he's like, no, it's fine. Let's sit down. Jesus asks him about it. John says that it starts like the story of Jephthah. And he's like, the Hittites, and Jesus like Ammonites. And he's like, oh yeah, sorry. And then it's this whole story about Agamemnon. He sacrificed his daughter, then he's killed by his wife, and then the wife is killed by the son, and then the Furies haunt him. And Jesus kind of asks a question. John's just like, I think I'm starting to understand more what's going on here. We have this flawed perspective. Things are going to change for us. And Jesus is like, yeah, you've been paying attention. Things will change, but I'm going to forgive you. You don't have to worry about forgiving yourself. I'm not going to leave you or forsake you. It was a touching scene.
Yeah, I wondered if this was, I had in my notes, was this where they're kind of putting the John 15 vibe? Abide in me, remain in me. Because they've been following a lot of the John dialogue, and I don't know if that's going to make it directly in, but this had the same energy, the same vibe, the same point.
Yeah.
And I really liked, like I just did actually I just filmed today as we record this, the group discussion video for the episode where we talked about this in our verse by verse journey through John. And just looking back on that material, like I am more convinced than ever that John 15 and all of that discourse sits in a bed of persecution talk, even more so than I ever gave it credit for when we were actually even recording those episodes. That was a theme of what we talked about. And yet I think it's even bigger and deeper than I even realized back then. And I really liked how this dialogue flowed with that. I had a couple other notes. I really liked this scene a lot. I loved the clever, I mean, it's John. This is John, the gospel writer John. We talked about his Greek, and he's got this like awareness of the Greek myths. And I won't tell Zebedee. And there's been a couple different quips here and there about how he knows it or whatever, but he knows it. He knows the nuances. I thought that was really good. And we could argue about who stole what from who, the Greeks or the Bible.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say stole. I mean, who's leveraging what.
Yeah.
But that one, I just thought, man, and this could just be how I'm choosing to hear it, but I feel like The Chosen is not pulling punches that they could easily pull. Like they could easily choose. I mean, there's a statement. What did John say? We are all doing things from our own flawed perspective.
Yeah.
That was the statement he made. Like we're all, and I'm just like, dude, that is a line that just really speaks well to the world we live in, where we're at as a people, as a church, as a whatever. I just thought, ooh, you don't have to go after that. But they've had multiple places where I'm like, dude, that's a thunderbolt for where we're at in our world today. And I really appreciate, and maybe I'm choosing to hear it through my own lens, and they meant it the other way. Who knows? But I just really liked that line. I bracketed it with big, bold underlines. So yeah, loved it.
That was the thing that like led to John's fear. He's like, hey, I'm starting to get it.
Yes.
And I'm realizing that my perspective and all of our perspectives has been flawed, and I'm going to mess it up, and we're going to lose you.
Yep.
And Jesus is like, yeah, you're paying attention. You do get it. Things are going to change, but you don't have to worry about that because I forgive you and I'm going to be with you.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. Great scene.
All right. So then we're back with Caiaphas and Gadara. They're approaching, and Ozem meets them outside, and Yanni comes out, and they deny them entry. They're like, yeah, we can't have the high priest in there because then you'll kind of sway them too much. And this whole scene where they're meeting is it kind of feels a little bit John 11, but we already had a portrayal of that scene previously. That's the one where Caiaphas goes like, you guys know nothing at all. I particularly love that line. But inside we have Shimon talking to Zebediah. He's like, we're no longer in control. And Zebediah blames the Hillel sympathizers. Again, are they saying this just for Bema listeners? I don't know, maybe. But Shimon says Jesus is dismissive of their tradition and their precedents, and he's not under their authority. And so he asks for proposals on what to do about this. Shmuel says, I have documented all this stuff. He brings up Lazarus. Yusuf argues like a resurrection is not an affront to our law. Like that's a good thing. Why are you arguing against this? And then Shimon says, if they believe he can raise the dead, why wouldn't they assume he's the Messiah? And Shmuel's like, yeah, exactly. So because this whole thing is a hoax, we got to kill Lazarus. And Zebediah calls a vote. And the whole voting process was really interesting too, because as they're bringing stuff around, like you could be a little more coy about it, but some people are just like very slowly placing their stones in the bowl.
Yes.
And like, hey, does everybody see what I'm voting for? Make sure you know. And then, they put their stones in there and then look around like and give each other those looks of self-satisfaction and whatever. So really interesting portrayal of this, I thought.
Yeah. And a very emotional vote by the time they got there. Definitely not. The objectivity, not that they would have the same kind of Western abstract objectivity that we would clamor for, but as depicted in this scene, Shmuel's just kind of like lost his mind. So we're just calling for a vote and putting it to a vote and get it to the spot, and here we are.
So then back outside, Caiaphas is getting an update from Zebediah and Yanni, and they're going on. They start talking about the previous high priest, Annas, and it's a real Han Solo situation going on here because Caiaphas and Yanni are saying Annas, but Zebediah is saying Annas. And so I don't know, how everybody can't say, is it Han Solo or is it Han?
Yeah.
Is it Alderaan or is it Alderaan?
Yeah. And I wasn't sure if that was just the way that they were saying it as characters in the show, out of the show, or if it was, I don't even know the difference I know that Annas comes from Ananias. I don't know how Aramaic versus, because the Sadducees and that crowd is probably going to speak far more Aramaic than maybe some of their Hebrew counterparts. Does that change how they pronounce it or say
sure.
it? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe there's something to that.
Who knows?
But ultimately, they're trying to force the hand of Caiaphas. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna bring in some other people. We're gonna invoke the name of your father-in-law." The whole thing is just incredibly awkward. They're like strangely praising each other, and then strangely Caiaphas is kind of slamming Yanni a little bit, and he's like, "Thanks for that kind of backhanded compliment."
Right. Yep.
But ultimately, they decide that they're going to get some extra opinions and some extra authority. They're going to try to add some authority to what's going on here.
Yeah, I was very curious at this point. Like, okay, what's going on here? Why are they doing this? How is this getting? I knew that it's relevant to the biblical text. So at this point, as I'm watching it, I'm just curious of like, oh, what are they doing? Why? And how is this going to work? I still, at this point where I'm at watching the season, which isn't, I'm not done with the season yet. I'm a little bit ahead. I'm still not entirely sure how this fits with, I don't necessarily understand the reasoning, and I could just be slow on the uptake, but the adding authority, I'm not sure what the dynamic, I'm not following the dynamic. Not that it's super important, but nevertheless, curious I am for sure.
Yeah, to me, it kind of seems like we know we want to get rid of this guy, but we got to make sure we have all our ducks in a row or we're going to get in trouble with Rome or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, totally.
So then we're back with Judas in the house. He finds Jesus and they sit down together, and Judas is talking about how people are going to twist Jesus' words. It's this critical moment, and Judas wants Jesus to lay claim to being the Messiah and just take control of everything. And Jesus asks Judas if you will still believe, even if he doesn't do whatever Judas has imagined he's going to do. And Judas is like, well, of course, but like, why am I even here if I'm not helping you? Like, I have a particular set of skills. Am I not supposed to use that? And Jesus is like, I didn't ask for your advice. And now you got to make a choice. Who do you belong to? It was me at one time, but it might not. You got to figure that out. And Jesus asks him to leave. And Judas struggles. He's like, I don't know. And Jesus is like, no, I really need you to go. And so he leaves, and Jesus just weeps.
Yeah, another good, as far as character development and how it operates, another good scene. One of the statements I have written down, all Israel is gathered, ready to crown you king. Like we're on the, like, I know how to make deals, and this deal is on a knife's edge, is what he says.
Yeah.
You know, lay claim to your birthright. I never asked you for your advice. Then what am I here? Like, he blows up. What am I here for? Like, which is very telling that he's like, he thinks he's there to like be Jesus's advice guy, to like help him in this moment.
Yeah.
And I had another note that I just circled that said evil eyes. Like, this whole thing is, for Judas, is he doesn't have a good eye. He has a very evil eye.
Yeah.
And that is tainting every opportunity that he has, because there are many, for him to see what truly is going on, or what could be happening, or who Jesus could be, or what he could be up to. He has an evil eye. It's not generous. It's very narrow. It's very self-preservation oriented. And it just drives him to the place he's at, and that choice of who do you belong to. I had Foreman, Genesis, Joseph vibes on that line.
Ooh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, and the whole perspective about it being a deal.
Yeah.
Like,
yep,
oh
totally.
my goodness. Because there's so many passages elsewhere where it's like, oh, the free gift of God.
Yes.
Freely I've given to you. Now you freely give. It's just not the way of Jesus.
Yep, totally.
So then we cut over to Joanna talking to Tamar about Passover and their kind of perspective of it as outsiders and how they've looked at it and how they've participated in it. And then Mary comes in and she's like, hey, we got to pack. Jesus says we got to get out of town. And then Peter comes in a few moments later and it's like, oh, we're actually staying together for now. Let's go. And Judas is talking to Peter on the way about how nobody seems to get it. He's like, are you guys all drunk? A little bit of, is that Acts 1 or 2 vibes where they're like, it's 9:00 in the morning, but you guys,
right. Sure.
What's going on here? And Jesus says he's hungry and he finds a fig tree. And John's like, it's not in season. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And then Judas makes this comment, like in the middle of Jesus looking around the tree. And he's like, this whole trip is a waste of time. We shouldn't be out here. We have better things to do than go to Bethany. And then Jesus curses the fig tree. And it was like, are you talking about the fig tree? Or are you talking about a different?
Yeah, they definitely left enough room, because you know how we teach that in session 3, and they left enough room for there to be clearly like, I think there's something more than just the tree. The disciples are kind of engaging it on that level. On the other hand, the disciples, you really feel like everything's unraveling kind of as they're walking on the road. You get this real sense of like, their bonds are loosening, their bonds together. Like they're not real tight. Like, yeah, we're on mission together. Like they're starting to ask questions. Judas is losing his mind. They're all kind of at wit's edge. The whole week has shook them. Like I think The Chosen's done a really good job of like just casting that contextual net. They could have just had people play their part, do their job, say their lines. They've really done a great job directing they're tired. They're confused, they're angry, they're sad, they're a mess. And it's not the same group that we saw even in last season walking on the road. And I thought that's well depicted.
Yeah, and this cursing of the fig tree occurs in Matthew 21 and Mark 11. It's not actually in Luke, but they have it in the show when they're on their way to Bethany. But in the Gospels, it's on their way from Bethany back to Jerusalem when this happens. But even within those two accounts, a little bit of disagreement. The fig tree immediately withers in Matthew, and it's not until the next day in Mark, which is backwards from what I would typically expect from those two. If you're like, hey, in one of the accounts, the fig tree immediately withers, and in the other one, it happens the next day. Which one's Mark? Which one's Matthew? I would totally get it wrong.
Yep, totally.
But then they get to the house of Lazarus. Jesus asks his disciples to keep watch while he dines inside with the women. And John is kind of listening. I'm not completely sure. I assume John can hear them, although later on, like they have the music and it's like, can John actually hear them? I don't know. But Jesus is recalling all these stories with them. They bring in Luke 2 with Jesus being left at the temple and his mom's memory of that. And Jesus going around the table, recognizing the hardships of everyone. I was particularly moved by his comments to Tamar and how her faith is still beautiful, and her response to that. And it's just like none of this. He just doesn't even compare to the joy of following you. I thought that was really great. But then Jesus is like, I got to ask you one more thing. I need some time alone. And he refers to them as apostles. And I think that's the first time in the show that he's used that word.
I noted it.
Yeah. So I don't know what it is about that. But he wants them to keep a distance. And then Sister Mary was like, well, if we can't have a Seder meal with you, then we want to do the Dainu in place of that. And they have prepared their own version of it. Lots of crying among the women, lots of crying for me. It was a very, very emotional, moving scene because we have come to know these people so well.
Absolutely. Probably one of my top 5 scenes of the whole series, the whole kit and caboodle. I have all kinds of notes here, Brent Billings.
Oh, yes. I would hope so.
First of all, I have a note for you. Did you notice the shaky camera in this scene? The camera was very shaky.
I did not.
I was like, was that a mistake or is that being done on purpose? Like it was such a weird, because it was pretty shaky.
Huh.
I thought I noticed it and then I paid attention and that camera is like all over the place, like somebody with a cell phone.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if it was being done on purpose to give a particular feel to the interaction or...
I would say it's certainly on purpose. I cannot imagine it not being on purpose.
Yeah, unless those were just like such great lines and great shots that even though the camera was getting bumped, they used it anyway. I don't know.
No, I doubt it. That's going to be intentional.
Yeah. So I loved this scene. And I know, I keep thinking throughout this, like, and I keep asking people that I know and I respect that are watching The Chosen that like it or don't or whatever. Women. I have been interested in the perspective of how women see these characters. And I've mentioned this in past seasons. Like there's these moments where it feels a little, I don't want to say complementarian, but like patriarchal. Like, oh, there's Eden just doing the women's work, just being the wife. They keep putting women in women's box, yada, yada, yada. But then I'll have other moments where I'm like, oh, they are really working hard to really center and kind of push these women. And so I've had the same problem here with the women being separate for Seder. Like here they're out at their own dinner and I'm like, oh man, they're separating the women and the men. I don't know how I feel. I loved this scene personally because you get what I'm learning about right now in grad school. Part of my work has been contextual biblical hermeneutic studies, like the history of the Bible. There's a bunch of my professors that are very strong in the feminist scholarship movement. So I get that. I get a lot of that in my classes. And one of the things that they are quick to point out, and I think there's absolute credibility here, is that the Gospels present the male disciples close to Jesus, but boy, do they struggle. Kind of knuckleheads, people that really don't have faith. And when you look at the women in most all of the gospel accounts, like they're not necessarily centered and they're not as close to Jesus, but they get it. They get it. And this scene depicted a group of, I mean, just think about how this room feels compared to the dudes.
Yeah.
They're a mess.
Yep.
And for good reason. I understand. I get it. But here's a group of women, same context, same set of questions. And he says, Mary, you understand. I mean, historically speaking, as a biblical scholar, I'm not saying that I am a biblical scholar, but thinking like a biblical scholar.
You're on your way, Marty.
We're working on it. The Mary Magdalene, scholastically, in historical academia, the Mary Magdalene storyline is captivating. For them to choose to say, Mary, you get it, you see it clearly. Like, if you're not into that scholarly debate, nobody's going to catch that. That is a big statement for the chosen folks to be making that statement. To call them apostles, they could have used a gazillion other words. They chose that word.
Yeah.
Like, this scene for me shows a room of women that not only intellectually understand, emotionally understand, are pastorally present. For me, you separate the woman, and they did not have to do this scene. This scene is not in the biblical text. You would not have to do it. And yet this scene was some of the most, and I'm sure it could easily be a setup for later on the resurrection and Mary's part and all that kind of stuff. This is just so well done as a work of honoring the women in this story historically in the text. I love that they had their own Dayenu prepared. Oh, good. Golly, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
And so I just had in my notes for this episode, like, I just had a thought exercise circled, like, A, what would be my Dayenu if I wrote it?
Yeah.
What would my Dayenu look like? B, which room would I be in?
Yeah.
Like, so many thought exercises could come off of this episode that would be well worth my self-reflective time. I just loved it. One of my favorite top 5 scenes of the entire series so far. So good. It was so good. So well done.
On the Apostles' Word, though, I think he was referring to the guys.
Oh, was he?
I think he was telling the women that he needed them to stay at a distance because he needed to give some final instructions to his apostles.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And it did have a male. Yep. He was referring to the 12 as a separate group.
Yeah.
That's right. No, you're absolutely correct.
But other than that, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're totally right.
And maybe he will refer to the women as apostles in some regard later on. But
yeah, well, and I wondered about it because the camera shot to Mary. Because you're like, I bet Mary probably feels like if Rama would be still alive, Rama, Tamar, and Mary, if I were them, I'd be like, and?
Yeah.
Here we are. And the camera kind of shot to them, and I was like, okay. There was like this acknowledgement of like, yeah, some of them are in this room too, but I'm talking about them. But anyway, I digress. We all see what we want to see, for sure.
Well, and Mary gets up and she leaves, heading into Jerusalem, and they're like, but he said not to, and she's like, he said not to be near him, but not to stay away from the city. And so she's got some plans that she's trying to figure something out. I don't know, was this portrayed? Maybe we're out of order in time again, because it was earlier in this episode when she goes and finds Yusuf. So is this scene before? Yeah, because there's the talk about like, oh, we need you guys to go to Bethany, when he told Zebedee that he needed to get the women to go to Bethany. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm just realizing that the timeline might be out of order here. But anyway, Mary has some ideas, but she does get it. And it seems that she's not alone among the women in their understanding of what's going on here.
I got some of the same questions with the Mary leaving. I'm not sure what she's up to or what they're doing with all that in the backstory. I'm still waiting to see if maybe more comes out, because she keeps popping in like she's there for Yusuf. And I'm like, is she doing other stuff too? Do they have her doing other things, or is it a timeline? Is it like kind of like the Seder flashbacks? This was their own Seder flashback.
Right.
I'm not sure, but I'm waiting to find out.
And some of them don't want to get it because they kind of do get it, but they don't want it to be true, like his mom.
Right.
But yeah, they do get it. So that's it for this episode, Marty.
My wife always makes a joke of Mary, the Mary and Martha Mary. She's always got a smile on her face.
Yeah.
She's like, she's just perpetually smiling as an actress.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It was a hard scene because she was just had that bubbly little, but it wasn't bubbly, but it was still like the smiley Mary.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, no, don't smile this time.
Maggie thinks that she is reminded of Anne Rose Qualls.
Oh, sure.
By that character.
Yeah.
Just
I
this
can see that.
totally. Overflowing sense of joy. Yeah.
100%.
So shout out to Anna Rose at the end of this episode. But that's it, Marty.
Okay, that's this episode. Time to see what happens in episode 5.
We will see soon. Yeah, I don't have anything additional to add, so I'll just say people can go to BayModDiscipleship.com and get in touch with us if they want. But yeah, thank you for joining us on this episode of the BayMod Podcast. We'll talk to you again soon.